Welcome back to Big Dan's Airguns review channel, and today, to be honest, I'm not even gonna say too much. Just look at that. If I talk too much, my tongue will stick out of my mouth and I'll bite it. That is something else. Look at the grain coming through here. Now, I will confess I have waxed this stock, which I know I shouldn't have done, because it's a slightly modified stock that we're doing on a gun that we're doing a review of. I will confess why that happened, because I'm only human, and I took one look at this woodwork and thought, ooh, wax. Basically a case of, well, body acting before brain did. You probably noticed we do a lot of that on this channel, say and do things we shouldn't. But yeah, it's come out looking like this. I will confess, I called Rangerite, who's the importer for these. Great bunch of lads and lasses. I called Rangerite just to confirm this isn't a review special, is it? Because if it is, I don't want it. Simple as, because it's unfair. It's not a proper review at that point, because it's already tuned up to be the best thing it could ever be, and it might not be what you get out the box. I'm happy to report they did say no, it's not. It is just an average Pretensis. We've had loads of really nice ones come in, and we just picked it up, looked at it, and then sent it on its way to you. So yes, it is an out of the box gun, and to back that up, I have had some really pretty standard Pretensises or Pretensis Ks come my way that haven't been waxed, and they have looked quite lovely. If I can, I'll put some images up in a second so you can see what they look like. But that is a gorgeous bit of kit. It really is. And much like its bigger brother, the standard Pretensis, it's basically pornography in rifle form. Look at the grain. Sorry, I'm going to stop fangirling. Right, let's move. Let's move on now. We'll get to features and see just what you get for your money. Whoa. So features, and what do you get for your money? As I'm sure you can imagine, you get a rubber recoil pad as standard. Coming up, you can also see the rifle has an adjustable comb, which is a nice little addition. I'm also pleased to report that the rifle is ambidextrous, so lefties rejoice, you can shoot this gun in comfort. Moving further through, we get to this lovely sort of dot type checkering that we saw on the previous Pretensis. I really like this, and the finish on this is lovely as well, if you can see that. Another nice little touch is the Reximex logo on the underside of the grip there. Coming back up, we can see the safety of this rifle. This is a manual safety. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the handling section. And coming up, we can see, as per the full fat Pretensis, this is a side lever action rifle. You can also make out the power adjuster, which is a lovely little addition, especially if you're into hunting or you want to shoot at different ranges and don't want to risk over penetration. Coming up a touch, we get to Reximex's dual rail system. What this means is that you can use a dovetail mount or a Picatinny or Weaver mount, and it'll fit on there a treat. In my opinion, this should be industry standard on all air guns. Coming down, we also get to the regulator pressure gauge, because this airgun is, as I'm sure you can guess, regulated. Lovely little touch. We'll see what that can do when we do the chronograph test. As we come down a touch, you can see more of that nice dot type checkering, and then as we move further along, we get to the barrel. It is 1/2 inch UNF threaded, which is great, because I think this is mostly going to be used as a hunting gun more than anything else. And then as we come down, you can see, yep, the air pressure gauge is on the front end, on the business end, shall we say, which I'm never the hugest fan of. But if you've got the reg pressure gauge back here, there's not many places you can really put the air pressure gauge without having some potential complications. So yeah, it is what it is on this one. Coming down a touch, we also have an accessory rail, if you can see that, so you can fit your bipods, what have you, on there. And you also have sling studs as standard, which is a nice little touch, especially considering, as mentioned a second ago, this is probably mostly going to be a good little hunting gun. We also have a match type multi-adjustable trigger, but we'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the handling section. And all of this is of course wrapped up in what I would say is quite possibly the prettiest walnut stock we've had on this channel. In fact, probably the prettiest stock, full stop. Sorry, I'll stop drooling in a second, but that is gorgeous, especially on a budget PCP. That being said, we're not done there. You also get Reximex's new single shot loader, which is definitely new and improved over the older one. And we also have 2 magazines as standard. Another little touch that I really like, and it might just be me, is the fact that we now have a Foster fill probe, not a thread cut one. For people who have multiple air guns, it can be a nuisance having to keep swapping out probes. You've got to tighten one up, then you might have a Foster probe, so you have to change your adapter, yada yada yada, all that sort of stuff. Make Foster probes industry standard. Reximex, Kral, Gammo, you name it. Give us this. In my opinion, a thread cut probe is very out of date at this moment in time. So with features out of the way, it's time to put it in the shoulder and see what we think. Although first, these mags, for those that haven't had a Reximex before, let's have a little look and see what these are about. Okay, so loading the mag, how easy or difficult is this? What I will say is, if you already own a Reximex rifle, there are no changes here, so you can skip this bit and move on to basically what you want to see. But for those that don't have a Reximex airgun, we'll just break this down. It's really easy. So on top of the mag, you can see there's a tray. You can just see we've unlocked it there. If you spin that the whole way around clockwise, you'll feel you're putting the magazine spring under tension. So with that, just hold it in place with finger and thumb. Use your middle finger, yes, it does have other purposes other than profanity, to cover up the pellet exit hole here, if you can see that, and then simply drop your pellet in like so. With that, that pellet is now holding that spring under tension. So with that done, simply pop your pellets in like so until you're done, and then you're ready to rock and roll. So with mag loading out of the way, let's chuck a scope on there, put it in the shoulder, and see what we think. Okay, so handling, and what do we think of the Reximex Pretensis carbine? Well, if you like the original Pretensis, you're really going to love this. Now, on the scales, again, we'll have a graphic somewhere, she's around 7.2 pounds. But to me, it feels lighter than that. I mean, we've got a Kona Sultan 1:10x24 on here, which granted is a smaller scope, but it's quite a chunky one, if you can see this. There's a little bit of heft on that, but to me, this just, I wouldn't say it quite feels like it's going to float away like the Lyra K, but it's comfortably lighter than the Puncher K in the shoulder. At least that's how it feels. It's a lovely little thing. And what I like about it is, actually, that's interesting. It sits perfectly between the Lyra K and the Puncher K. The Lyra K is light as a feather, but to some it can feel not awkward to shoulder, but it's a funny looking, or it's a funny little thing, I'll say. The Puncher carbine is a lot more traditional, but it's got that little bit of weight on there that keeps it, again, not heavy, but it's got that solid feeling. This sits perfectly in the middle. It's a lot more rifle-like to shoulder than the Lyra carbine, but it's maybe for some might find it more manageable than the Puncher carbine. It's a beautifully balanced thing, I've got to say that. So when it comes to actually in the palm, I've got to say it's gorgeous. I will say as well, I really like this sort of checkering pattern that they've got on the go, because not only does it look really eye-catching, but it's actually got a genuinely sort of tactile feel to it. That would give you grip. There you go, you can see that. That will give you grip in worse weather conditions, if you could bear to take such a delicious stock, dare I say it, out in the bad weather. But I'm sure this will be out, or is out, in a synthetic version as well. So with that out of the way, let's talk about now about the trigger and handling and such like that. So cocking effort, it's quite light, to be fair. That's quite nice. What I will say, one thing that I am not the hugest fan of, and I still haven't changed my opinion on it, the safety. Yes, it's not terrible. I mean, you can just flick it off with your index finger, fire, but then having to put it back on, you've got to sort of wrap your finger around. I mean, this isn't an enormous scope. Some people might have target scopes on here, and that's going to be even worse than what you kind of, like there you can see what you have here. Give me a little flicky safety in front of the trigger and we're laughing, but that's my only nitpick so far. But let's have a look at the trigger. So we'll take aim in the distance, give it a little squeeze. Safety's on. I was just thinking, oh my god, it's broken. Right, so take aim, give it a little squeeze. Right, so it's a strange one. This one out of the box, I'd say it's more of a single stage than a two stage. Also that loading there, if you can see that, returning that pellet into the breech is silky smooth. So let's give that another go. You can see there's a little something, it weights up but it doesn't stop. If you see that there, creeping a bit, and then off it goes. It's more of a single stage than a two stage trigger. However, you can adjust it, and we're going to look at that now. So to adjust the trigger, first thing we're going to want to do is take the stock off. To do that, our first step is to unscrew the tip of the safety bar. Now the safety bar is removed, just push it from this side to the other side and it'll come straight out, like so. When this is done, just remove the screw from the underside of the stock and the stock will pull clean off. So your adjustment screws on the underside, as you can see here, where my tool is sticking out here. Just give it a few turns in and then give the rifle a dry fire and you will feel the difference that it's made. If you get the rifle set up correctly, you will feel you get that second stage stop and then pop, off it goes. If the rifle doesn't cock, don't panic, simply wind the adjuster out slightly and you'll feel then it'll latch on the trigger sear. So with our adjustments made, let's see what the difference is like. Okay, so after those trigger tweaks, what do we end up with? Also, apologies for moving you a bit. I'll tell you the God's honest reason why, because the sun was blinding me where it was bouncing off this table. So that's why I was staring at you like that earlier. But the Pretensis carbine, after a tweak, what do we end up with? Well, we've taken the mag out because I'm going to be pointing the rifle a bit like this. So mag's out, safety off, let's see what we get. So all we've done is adjust that screw like you saw earlier. So you can see there's second. In fact, hang on, little finger, just because we can. So hopefully you can see my finger on the trigger here. Bouncing off second. How about that? That's a bit of a difference, isn't it? A bit of a transformation. That is gorgeous. Let's just do that one more time. So I have done the pull weight jiggery testy thing on this. We might even have the video. If not, I'll put a little snippet like we did earlier. It's 0.6 pounds in regards to the second stage pull. That is sweet. I could make it even lighter than that, but I like a little bit of meat on second, so you've got a little sort of buffer you can bounce off of just in case you don't want to take the shot. So let's do that again. Little finger, in fact corner of little finger, you can see this. Bouncing off second. Off it goes. That is nice. I will say that, really nice. So if you don't like the Pretensis trigger out the box, and it's the same unit as the full-size Pretensis as well, so get to playing with it if you want to. If you don't like the trigger out of the box, simply take the stock off like we've shown, have a little play with that little screw, wind it in to sort of make it more like this, sort of more acceptable maybe to some, but wind that screw in. Don't go too far like we said, because you might notice it might not cock if you do that. If that's the case, just back it out maybe half a turn at a time and then fine tune it from there. That is a nice trigger. I will say maybe it's a little bit of a nitpick, the fact that you've got to, you know, take the stock off before you can adjust the trigger and such like that. But to be honest, will you do it again when it's set? I'll let you at home decide if that's a big nitpick or problem or not. To be honest, I don't mind it at all. There is a little bit of hammer bounce. Hang on, I'll shut my mouth so you can, I'll do you all a favour and I'll shut my mouth. You'll listen. There's a little burp, but it's a very microscopic burp at that. So it's not too bad. Genuinely, I've had rifles twice the price of this that have been far worse than what this is. But it does still raise the question, what is it going to be like through the chronograph? Well, let's get it out and find out. What? So it's 25 yards accuracy testing time. The target has been set up, we've checked our range, and we have a fair smattering of pellets in front of us as well. So we've got things from your budget gear, such as your beam and round dome-headed pellets, such like that, all the way through to your Crossman Premiers, your JSBs, Normas, a fair selection. We've got some oddballs as well. Of course, we've brought back the SMK Spitfires after how well they did in the full fat Pretensis years ago. And we've also got some lead-free just to chuck in there to see what happens. So we've got a fair test in front of us. The weather is absolutely beautiful. There's a little bit of wind that does build up every now and again, but I'm sure we can shoot our way around that. So, 25 yards, Pretensis carbine. Let's see what we get. So that's the 25 yards accuracy testing out of the way, and as I'm sure you could tell, the wind did sadly decide to pick up. That being said, we still got some pretty superb results. Some honourable mentions go to the Norika Premium pellets, which managed 3 shots in almost the exact same hole, but sadly one pellet was away from the rest of the group. Barring the flyer, we had 4 pellets in a 0.32 inch group. The SMK black pellets also did surprisingly well, with the full group sitting comfortably under a 5p coin. The AccuPel FTs shot well, albeit with 1 flyer, with the 4-shot cluster coming in at 0.33 inch. The Spitfires, when leaded in, could also be excellent. We had 3 shots through the same hole, but sadly 2 just missed the group. The Norma pellets did very well, with a 0.37 inch 5-shot cluster. The Express pellets did well too, with another 5p group, but the absolute star of the show was the Crossman 7.9 grain, with the 5-shot cluster measuring in at just 0.27 inch. Now that's impressive. So with that out of the way, we're going to grab the best pellets from the test, including a couple of other tins, you know, for the sake of science, and then we'll see how it does at 50 yards. So as you can see, the Norma FT Heavies did the best at 50 yards in the wind with a 5p group at that range. To be fair, that's pretty darn good, especially when you consider this is a budget gun and the conditions. That being said, normally we would end the review here. However, I had a cheeky look at the weather forecast, and apparently tomorrow, or the next day when this was being filmed, was a lot calmer. So I got all my tasks done, running around like a headless chicken as early and as quickly as I could, to have another go with the little Pretensis carbine. I had stepped out to 60 yards, however, I had that thought in the back of my mind, damn, get the rangefinder, don't step this out. Turns out I went a little too far. You'll see it's actually 66 yards, so a fair old trek for a sub 12 feet-pound airgun. And we're going to see just what the little rifle can do at 66 yards, but this time on a calm day. This should be a good bit of fun. So as you can see here, it did seriously well, but I'm not just going to do that once. We're going to have another go because we got one little flyer, if you can see that here, which annoyed me, to be honest. So we're going to do it again and see if we can make it a tighter cluster. But we've got one almost 5p group, barring one flyer, at 66 yards, bear in mind. Let's try again, see if we can get all of that under the 5p coin. The gun is so easy to shoot, it makes me look good. And I tell you something, that's a hell of an achievement. So the final verdict, and as we say, no rifle is perfect, so we're going to have to get the negatives out of the way first. Not really a negative as such, because people have told me that they've had no issues with it, but I'm not a fan of that safety. I'd rather a toggle in front of the blade you can just flick off and on very quickly. It's a bit of a faff, especially when you have a larger scope, and you might have seen in the video you got to kind of shimmy your hand underneath the rear of the scope to switch it on, or use your left hand, your leading hand, to switch the safety back on. It's a silly thing, but again, it's my nitpick with the original Pretensis, and it hasn't changed here. The other thing I would say is be careful using the single shot loader. The reason why I say that is because it doesn't feature an O-ring where it should be to help seat the pellet when you load it. And the Pretensis uses a standardized block. So basically this block is the same no matter if you have a 177 or a 2.5. What this means is there's a very large, basically gaping mouth where the pellet probe housing is, which is just begging to absorb a pellet and then jam your action up. Now, it is very easy to fix if this happens. Take your scope off, there's a few screws in the top of the scope rail, unscrew those, take that rail off, and then you can literally with your hands just pull out the cocking mechanism. In there you'll see your crushed up pellet. Chuck that out, put it all back together again, and job's a good one. I will also report I never had a single jam when I was using the magazine. They're in there, those pellets are in there pretty good. Just have a bit of caution when using the single shot loader. So let's cut to the chase. Would I recommend the Reximex Pretensis K? As we used to say, who's going to like this gun? Target shooters or pest controllers? The answer, honestly, is both. It's as accurate as anything else out there. The shot count, while not humongous, but then what can you expect from that little cylinder, is plenty enough to do plenty of shooting at the range with. And to be honest, it is just such a pretty little thing. You could pretty much hang it on your wall and leave it there as an art piece or something along those lines. It's a beautiful little gun, it really is. So as you can tell, I'm very smitten, so I'm going to say to everybody, to be honest with you, don't listen to me anymore. What are you sitting behind your laptop screen or computer screen for, or phone? Go shoulder one, shoot one, take it to the range, see what you think of it. I am well chuffed with this little gun, and to be honest, I think it's going to take a hell of a big gun to knock this off my #1 spot. At this moment in time, it's going to have to be something special, because to be honest, it's very rare that you get a perfect gun, and as we said, this has its problems, but it's damn close to it. And with that said, thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.